and welcome to TVW's coverage of the last day of the 105-day legislative session. I'm joined by Republican Representative Ed Orcutt. Thank you very much for your time today. Representative Orcutt, can you walk me through your biggest takeaways from the budget proposals and the discussions this year in Olympia?
Yeah, it's a continuation of the problems that got us to where we are today. So it's continued overspending. Our revenues continue to grow, and yet they continue to talk about having a deficit. Well, if your revenues are growing and we have a deficit, it's only because they're trying to spend more money than we're taking in. Anybody on their household budget has to look at how much money they've got coming in, look at what their expenses are, and prioritize. Okay, what are your most important expenses? What are the things you can do without? You spend your money first on the things that you need to do, and then the things you want to do, they get put off till the end to see if you have enough money. The problem that we see here in the legislature is the budget writers always seem to write their budget. This is what we want to spend, and then they go and put tax packages together to try and make sure they have enough money to do it. Again, this year, they're overspending how much they've got coming in. And if you look at the outlook documents that they're putting out for this budget, it shows ending fund balance is getting smaller as we go along. So it's the same problem that we've seen, and it's the same problem that's led us to where we are today.
Do you think that the legislature, or the budget rather, could be vulnerable to a sudden economic downturn, say with the next economic forecast?
I think it is extremely vulnerable, and here's why. Because if you look at the budget outlook documents that are prepared regarding this budget, and you look and see what the ending fund balances are, the ending fund balance based on our, and our starting point is our March revenue forecast. And you look at the ending fund balance, at the end of this biennium, they're looking at a $225 million ending fund balance on a $78 billion budget. What nobody's talking about is we get these revenue forecasts on a quarterly basis, so 4 per year. But we get monthly collection reports. So every month we get a collection report. We've already had one collection report since the March forecast. And if you look out at the end of the 2027 biennium, it's 225 million ending fund balance. But our collection report for March said we are going to be $76 million less than expected. That takes that down to about 150 million ending fund balance. Go one more fiscal year out to 2028, they're projecting 136 million as an ending fund balance. So now you take that 76 million out of that 136, and now you're down to 60 million in ending fund balance on a $78 billion budget. That's a really small amount. That's like having a $5 bill in your wallet in case your transmission goes bad. And that's what we're really looking at. Any kind of reduction, any little blip where our revenues come in less than we expect, that thing's out of balance.
Do you think that the spending, the proposed spending could be reduced further without really significant cuts to vital services and programs?
Yeah, and that's what they absolutely have to do. I mean, we're in a position where they have grown the budget. I mean, I remember it was, 15 years ago or so that we were at a $25 billion budget. Now we're looking at a $78 billion budget. We've seen revenue growth in some past years of 11 and 13%. So they've bloated this budget. They've continued to spend like we're going to get revenues in 5%, 6% or more revenue growth, when we're now at a point our revenues are still growing, but they're going a little slower. So we're probably going to be between 2.5% and 2.8% revenue growth for this year, and then we're looking at 3 to 4% revenue growth in the out years, and yet they're still overspending that.
So some of the proponents of progressive taxation changes here in Washington argue that there's more to do, and that the folks on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum still pay too much in terms of their overall income in taxes compared to those to the people that have the most money in Washington. Do you think that, based on what happened this session, that is going to be better in the future?
No, I think it actually gets worse. You know, you talk with Representative Barkas and you talk about the gas tax that's being added. That's very regressive. You look at some of the other taxes that are being put on in this budget, and a lot of them are going to, whether directly or indirectly, are going to hit consumers at all income levels. So when you put a B&O tax increase on manufacturing, on anything that's, you know, on retail, all of that gets added into the cost of goods sold. And what that ends up doing is that ends up costing everybody, whether you're at the upper end of the income spectrum or the lower end of the income spectrum. Other taxes on services, some of those services are to the businesses in this state. Those have to get built into the prices that they charge their customers. So all of the customers, all of the consumers are getting hit with the taxes here. And ultimately, businesses don't pay taxes. They collect and remit them to the state. But it's ultimately gets built into their price. It's ultimately the consumers who are actually paying those taxes. So even those at the low end of the income spectrum are going to be paying more in taxes through paying more for goods and services.
Some proponents of the wealth tax proposal that was originally, you know, included as part of a budget deal, but later was sort of abandoned from that, are likely or expected to bring that back up again in the future. What's your perspective on that?
Well, it's a very risky tax for one thing. You see what the stock market's been doing this year. We've seen stock markets crashes in past years, and if you're valuing the assets based on a value at a certain date, what did the stock market do that date? And what does that do from one year to the next, to the next, to the next? Very volatile. So that can change a lot. And if you're trying to base your budget on that and you get a sudden downturn, you get a bear market, and all that revenue goes away, if there are no capital gains, if the wealth is reduced, all your projections of revenue are gone. So trying to base your budget on something that's a very volatile tax, like a wealth tax, like a capital gains income tax, any of those things, estate tax, you don't know who is going to pass away any given year or what the value of their estate's going to be. So those are all problematic, that they're including anything with capital gains income tax or estate tax in this. It makes it a little more volatile, a little more uncertain. And especially when you look at that 2028 ending fund balance, what we know right now, that it's already down, effectively down to $60 million on a $78 billion, and actually it's going to be over $80 billion by the time we get into that biennium. So it's very, very concerning about how tight this budget is, yet they've raised $9.5 billion in new taxes.
Just to close this out here, I just wondered if you could share some of the feedback you've been getting from constituents.
The primary feedback I've been getting back is no, in capital letters with exclamation points. And I've been getting thousands of people saying no new taxes. Most of the people out there know that the taxes are eventually going to come down to them, whether it's directly on them or whether it's on any of our employers, and then it gets embedded into the costs. I will say there is some good news in that they did not do the 3% growth factor. So the 1% property tax growth factor will remain in place. So that was the one positive thing that I think came out of this session, was that that one negative thing didn't come out.
Well, we'll have to leave it there. Again, Ranking Republican Member, House Finance Committee, Representative Ed Orcutt, we do appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.
And that concludes our special coverage of Sine Die. Again, thank you for watching, and all of these interviews will be available on tvw.org. Goodbye.